In the Middle East, Israel's strikes have now claimed the lives of 9 Iranian nuclear scientists. Those killed include leading experts in physics, mechanics and materials engineering. Iran has confirmed the deaths through semi-official channels. On the other hand, Israeli military states that 7 of their soldiers have been lightly injured after an Iranian missile hit central Israel. This escalation has dealt a fatal blow to nuclear diplomacy, with Iran now declaring talks with the United States meaningless. Tehran cites US President Donald Trump's open support for Israel's strikes as a betrayal. Meanwhile, a new wave of strikes has hit East Azerbaijan, Lorestan and Kermanshah. Explosions were heard in Tabriz, with smoke seen rising. In Asadabad County, 2 were killed and 5 injured. Iran activated air defences in multiple cities. Meanwhile, Israeli Defence Minister Israel Katz has issued a stark warning. If missile attacks continue, Tehran will burn. Well, this, of course, comes amid heightened escalations following that first huge strike from Israel onto Iran nuclear and military facilities overnight. Further escalation, Iran striking back with around 150 ballistic missiles. Joining us to discuss all of these developments and the ramifications of them is Ambassador Daniel Carman, a former ambassador of Israel to India, who is joining us from Tel Aviv. Daniel, thank you ever so much for being here with us in this difficult time. I hope you and your family are okay. What is the feeling in Israel now in the aftermath of these strikes, where we know several missiles got through the Iron Dome defences due to the sheer number that was sent from Tehran?
Well, Josh, thank you very much for having me. And indeed, we're going through very difficult times. But I think the alternative would have been much worse, knowing where the Iranians were going. Is in what I would call the 11th or almost the 12th hour of the change in their in the pace of their nuclear development program and the weaponization program, which are 2 elements that I would call a double existential threat to Israel through nuclear and ballistic missiles capabilities, adding to what we've been unfortunately almost used to, which is the use of proxies to attack Israel in various ways, the Houthis with ballistic missiles and other proxies in other ways. Of course, the blow to Hezbollah a few months ago changed some of the equation, but what really worried us and brought the Iranians to the 11th hour and a half is really the development of nuclear capabilities and weaponization, the ballistic side of it. And we see the threat of ballistic missiles in the last few days. You were talking about 150. I think the number is much higher, but ballistic missiles, we're talking about 175, close to 200 in the last 48 hours, which affects all of us. And one correction I would make to all of us when talking about the 2 sides of the strikes is the fact that Israel, as you rightly said, has been attacking nuclear facilities and military facilities and nuclear scientists and military leadership in Iran. Iran has been hitting civilians. And we only have to quote and to listen what their leaders are saying. They're talking about a revenge, and they're talking about retaliation. But what they're doing is to attack civilians. You mentioned 7 Israeli soldiers were slightly hit in central Israel. There were 4 people, killed, civilians killed in the blast over residential areas in 5 or 6 different landfall sites. and about 80 people were injured that way or another. So this difference between attacking in a preemptive strike military and nuclear facilities on the one hand, and attacking civilian residential areas on the other is not something that I would put in the same equation.
Yes, Ambassador Carman, I will just add that there have been civilian casualties reported in Iran, dozens, over 70, though the information around the collateral damage or whether these are independent civilian strikes, we haven't had confirmation yet. But what I do want to talk about, Ambassador, is the timing of this large-scale assault on military and nuclear facilities within Iran. This coming ahead of another talk, a sixth round of talks between the US and Iran over a potential nuclear deal. Now, earlier on the show, we had another guest on who said that the US had given a 60-day timeline, and on day 61, Israel struck. But we know that the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran took years to plan and carry out with the support of multiple countries, including Russia, Western nations, China as well. We also have to acknowledge that Steve Witkoff has been placed into this position but isn't historically a politician or a diplomat. So do you think that more time could have been given to avoid this escalation and avoid deaths that have come as a result of that attack on nuclear and military facilities within Israel?
Well, this is one of those events and crises that you never know because you don't have an implementation of both options. One option was chosen by Israel, and for a very good reason, because we understood our people, our military intelligence, the people who are following the developments in Iran have come to the conclusion, as I said before, we're almost at the 12th hour of irreversibility, probably. And what we see through the ballistic missiles that are conventional, that are sent towards Israel, towards the central Israel, paralyzing the whole country for 48 hours, as we now feel on our specifically and personally. You are interviewing me in the safe room, although we are in a recess between launches. It can happen anytime, and maybe during this interview we will be asked to go into the shelters. So I cannot tell you what would be the alternative. I can tell you that there has been acceleration of the development of nuclear weapons in the last few months, a very dangerous, crucial, critical acceleration. And yes, Israel as a sovereign country has decided to exert its right or its obligation for self-defense, and this is what we're doing.
Yes. We hope, of course, you are okay, and I can't start to imagine the psychological impact of being in Israel or Iran at this moment as a civilian. But I want to shift this now as we come towards the end of this discussion, Ambassador, towards the geopolitical aspect. We've heard Pope Leo XIV, we've heard world leaders, both on the traditional side of Iran or Israel as well, calling for a de-escalation, calling for calm. When Israel launched that huge scale attack on infrastructure within Iran, they must have expected that there would be a response. We've now had Israel Katz saying that Tehran will burn if there are further attacks. Was the Israeli military not expecting this to happen? And surely Israel's government knew that if they attacked on this scale, then there would be a response and the potential regional and global geopolitical ramifications off the back of that.
Well, I'm not in the room, and I cannot tell you exactly what the nuances of all the participants, but I'm sure that a reaction was expected. Maybe a bigger reaction was expected, maybe a more Iranian successful in the eyes of the Iranian reaction was expected, but there's no doubt that nobody thought that it would come unanswered. But I think that the technology that we have shown and the preparations that according to sources, it has been months in the making. All the preparations brought the Iranian reaction to be smaller than feared, probably. But the big question, and I would pose two questions. Maybe we could debate them in the next few days when the dust settles a little more. One is an affirmation from my side that this is not only an Israeli-Iranian crisis. It's a crisis that involves and worries many countries around the Middle East, including moderate Arab countries. I don't want to speak in their names, but we all know how worried those countries are of the Iranian nuclear development. The big enemy of Iran is not necessarily Israel. The big enemy could be another country in our region, because the vision of the Iranian regime is a historical vision, and I'm not sure we have time to discuss what it means. But they have an historical way of looking at things and where they are going, according to the will of God, as they say. But let's leave it at this moment. It's a Israel-Iranian crisis. It's a regional crisis, and it should worry the whole world. And as we see, leaders around the world are very much worried. Some of them are giving the automatic de-escalation will and wish. We haven't heard from the UN Secretary General, but I can tell you exactly what he will say. Relevant or not, that's another story. What's relevant is the fact that Iranian has to have its nuclear capability development eliminated,
Yes.
Before we continue with this, with the exit strategy, which is essential and should be contemplated also.
Yes,
This
absolutely.
is not a crisis forever. It should be ended as soon as possible.
Yes, Ambassador Daniel Carman, we are unfortunately out of time, but thank you for joining us, and we wish you safety in this moment of uncertainty. Of course, we will bring you all of the latest that we get from this ongoing situation between Iran and Israel. But we move on now on a high-level, multidisciplinary